In the muted light of early morning, the sprawling urban jungle of Chicago was only beginning to stir. High-rise buildings, their glass facades reflecting a tangle of awakening hues, stood as silent witnesses to the convergence of two fated souls. Mira, an unassuming yet fiercely determined woman in her late 20s, navigated through the maze of the city streets with a mix of trepidation and quiet anticipation. Unknown to her, a presence as old and troubled as the city itself moved silently in tandem, a presence destined to alter the course of her life forever. Mira's life had been a study in contrasts. Raised in a modest household overshadowed by whispered tales of family secrets and profound loss, she had always felt tethered to something more than the ordinary. Late nights spent poring over dusty journals, whose fragile pages chronicled the legacy of a family cursed by hidden truths, had instilled in her a longing for answers. These fragments of the past whispered of a history entangled with supernatural lore, where loyalty and betrayal interwove in tragic patterns. With a deep-rooted desire to break free from the confines of her predetermined destiny, Mira had trained her body and mind, preparing herself to confront whatever lay ahead. That fateful morning, Mira received a cryptic message on her phone. No sender name, just a single location and a time, as if destiny had scribbled its own invitation. The urban coordinates led her to the periphery of the city, where concrete gave way to the rugged edges of nature. The towering remnants of an old industrial site, long abandoned and overrun by nature's reclaiming touch, now served as a forgotten stage for supernatural rendezvous. It was here, amid the rusted relics and wild growth, that Mira first encountered Victor. Tall, with an aura that oscillated between refined intensity and raw, untamed power, he was unmistakable even from a distance. His eyes, deep and restless, held centuries of sorrow and determination. Legend had it that alphas among his kind were burdened with a restless spirit, a trait that Victor embraced but also fought with a rare intensity. As he moved, every step exuded an effortless command reminiscent of both a noble leader and a haunted wanderer. Their first meeting was anything but ordinary. Mira, drawn by the inexplicable pull of Victor's enigmatic presence, approached with both caution and curiosity. A hushed exchange of words ensued, a conversation layered with subtle defiance and mutual understanding. Victor's voice, low and resonant, recounted fragments of his tormented past. "I've spent lifetimes running from shadows, Mira," he murmured, his gaze scanning the horizon as though the answer lay beyond the next ridge of dark forest. "But sometimes, fate forces our paths to cross, leaving behind the remnants of broken oaths and shattered promises." Mira's response was gentle yet resolute. "Maybe, in the echo of your turmoil, I can find a way to piece my own story together," she replied, her tone a blend of empathy and quiet strength. Their conversation was brief, a spark that ignited curiosity, but the impact was indelible. It was as if the universe had conspired, intertwining their destinies by a simple twist of fate. After that initial encounter, Mira found herself haunted by both Victor's words and the mystery enveloping his existence. Days turned into restless nights as she scoured old archives in the dim light of her modest apartment, her mind racing with visions of distant eras and spectral lore. The city, with its bustling neighborhoods and hidden alleys, bore secrets that mirrored her own internal struggle, the fight between tradition and transformation, between embracing the past and forging a new future. Under the neon glow of downtown, Mira began to trace clues hidden in the undercurrents of urban legends. She discovered that Victor's lineage, deeply rooted in Native American and immigrant stories of survival and metamorphosis, was a tapestry woven with ancient rituals and untold sacrifices. Every whispered word and every half-forgotten myth that surfaced from libraries or late-night conversations with elderly storytellers painted a portrait of a once powerful leader, cursed to wander through generations as a restless, blood-bound warrior. The realization that Victor could be more than a creature of myth, a man haunted by the weight of ancestral expectations and personal demons, only deepened Mira's resolve. Her internal monologue echoed with determination. If his past is written in scars and shadows, then his future could be reshaped by the force of true redemption. With every step she took, from the busy streets to quiet rural roads, Mira's resolve crystallized into a daring pursuit of truth and connection. One evening, as dusk bled into twilight, Mira's quest for answers led her to an old family estate that once belonged to a celebrated lineage known for their mystical ties and formidable powers. The estate, secluded amidst whispering pines and rugged hills, was shrouded in an eerie beauty, a reminder of a bygone era where honor and betrayal danced in equal measure. Here, Mira unearthed a faded journal whose cryptic entries alluded to ancient rites, secret gatherings, and a forbidden alliance with supernatural forces. The text hinted at rituals that had been performed to bind alphas to an unyielding destiny, rituals meant to strengthen the pack at the expense of personal freedom. Reading these passages, Mira felt as though the ink on the paper connected her to Victor's eternal struggle, a struggle against fate itself. Back in the concrete labyrinth of Chicago, Victor was battling his own inner turmoil. As an alpha burdened by duty and regret, his nights were consumed by dreams of past failures, a series of fractured moments where he had attempted to find solace in the fleeting warmth of human connection, only to be betrayed by the very forces he sought to control. In one particularly vivid dream, he saw images of a crumbling family crest and heard faint voices accusing him of forsaking his true nature. "I must protect my kind," Victor would whisper to himself in the dark of his solitude, his voice filled with both defiance and sorrow. Yet, every thought was shadowed by the realization that he could never fully escape the legacy of betrayal, a truth that cut deeper than any physical wound. Their separate journeys were inching toward an inevitable collision. Each moment of introspection, each step taken in defiance of destiny, fanned the flames of an internal revolution. Myra's newfound understanding of Victor's lineage and her own determination to find redemption began to merge into a powerful narrative of love and defiance. The intensity of her exploration was matched only by the feverish pace of Victor's own awakening, a journey marked by whispered confidences, cryptic symbols discovered in ancient murals, and the relentless beat of a bloodline determined to rewrite its course. One chilly autumn evening, as the wind danced with the falling leaves along a forgotten alleyway in the heart of Chicago, fate intervened once more. Mira, clutching the weathered journal, found herself face to face with an unexpected threat, a group of menacing figures whose eyes bore the cold glint of merciless intent. They were relics of a past steeped in vendettas and dark pacts, sworn enemies of Victor's kind. Their sudden appearance, lit by the flickering light of a nearby street lamp, sent a jolt of adrenaline coursing through her veins. In that charged moment, Mira clutched the journal close to her heart, feeling its secrets pulse like a rhythm of hope. Before the men could close in, a commanding growl echoed from the shadows. Out of the darkness emerged Victor, his presence a surge of protective ferocity. "You will leave her unharmed," he intoned with a voice that vibrated like the growl of a storm, each word laden with a threat that left no room for hesitation. The attackers, taken aback by the unexpected resistance, hesitated for a heartbeat, an eternity in that fleeting moment of confrontation. Mira, eyes wide with a mix of fear and awe, realized that Victor was more than a myth or a tormented soul. He was a force that embodied the primal struggle between light and dark. The confrontation escalated swiftly. The attackers, emboldened by their numbers, advanced with a dangerous mixture of malice and determination. Victor's instincts surged as he maneuvered with an agility that blurred the lines between human and beast. The clash was as much a battle for survival as it was a test of ancient loyalties. Every clash of fists and every flash of predatory prowess resonated with the echoes of history, a reminder that the past was never truly buried but endlessly resurrected in moments of crisis. Amidst the chaos, Mira found herself caught in a maelstrom of emotions, a cocktail of terror, exhilaration, and an inexplicable bond that tethered her even closer to Victor. When the last of their attackers finally retreated into the night, the silence that followed was as profound as it was unsettling. Breathing heavily, Myra's eyes met Victor's, and in that instant, unspoken promises passed between them. Despite the tumult and the burgeoning danger that lurked at every corner, they recognized a shared destiny, a call to confront the darkness that seeped through the city's veins and the ancient curses that threatened to consume them both. Later that night, in the secluded refuge of an abandoned warehouse lit only by the scattered glow of moonlight filtering through broken windows, Mira and Victor found a fragile moment of calm. Their conversation drifted between terse silences and revelations steeped in vulnerability. "Your past, it haunts you more than you let on," Mira observed quietly, her voice echoing off the cold, concrete walls. Victor's reply was measured but laden with regret. "It's not just my past, Mira. It's a legacy, one that has brought betrayal, bloodshed, and the constant battle against a fate I never chose." Their dialogue, interspersed with pauses heavy with introspection, revealed layers of loss and longing. In these formative hours, the seeds of trust were sown amid adversity. Myra's heart, once guarded against the unpredictable forces of destiny, began to yield to the possibility of redemption found in Victor's tortured soul. As the first hints of dawn approached, painting the city in shades of hope and renewal, both sensed that their paths were irrevocably entwined, a union forged in the crucible of pain and the relentless pursuit of healing. With the broken promises of yesteryears and the threat of ancient adversaries still looming large, a silent vow was made, that together they would challenge the fates and reclaim what had been lost, redefining legacy through the transformative power of love and courage. In that quiet pre-dawn moment, as the world held its breath, the first chapter of their entwined destinies was written, a prologue steeped in danger, yearning, and the promise of an unfolding epic that would test every fiber of their being. Every whispered memory and every step toward forgiveness carried an undercurrent of defiance against a destiny dictated by shadows and blood. The lingering question remained, could redemption be found amid betrayal and the remnants of forgotten promises, or was their intertwined fate doomed to repeat cycles of pain? The winds had shifted since that fateful night in the abandoned warehouse, and with them came new layers of tension and elusive secrets. As dusk descended upon Chicago, casting elongated shadows over the city's labyrinthine streets, Mira found herself immersed in a relentless pursuit of Victor's hidden past, a past that shimmered just beyond the veil of his guarded silence. In the seclusion of a cramped downtown archive, Mira sifted through brittle records and aging photographs that chronicled the obscure lineage of Victor's pack. Each document bore cryptic symbols and time-worn annotations, hinting at unspeakable rituals and alliances forged in blood and sorrow. The weight of her discoveries pressed upon her like an ancient curse, yet there was a spark of determination in her eyes, a refusal to let the darkness of the past eclipse the possibility of redemption. While Mira's investigations deepened, Victor wrestled with his own inner demons in the solitude of his secluded refuge, a refurbished loft atop an old industrial warehouse on the fringe of the city. The loft, partially reclaimed by nature with ivy creeping through abandoned window frames, was Victor's sanctuary and prison simultaneously. Within its sparse walls, relics of a forgotten era, weathered photographs of ancestors, vestiges of ceremonial regalia, and cryptic manuscripts, lay scattered like fragments of a shattered legacy. Every object resonated with memories of promises broken and sacrifices made in the name of duty. In the quiet of the night, Victor would often pace between these remnants, his mind a churning storm of regret and resolve. The echo of ancestral voices, almost audible in the rustle of fading pages, implored him to break free from the chains of expectation, yet the weight of betrayal in his family's history was relentless. One particularly rain-soaked evening, as the city's pulse quickened under the patter of relentless droplets, Mira received a tip from an unexpected informant, a disheveled old man known in hushed circles as the Keeper. In a dimly lit diner on the outskirts of the urban sprawl, their conversation was laced with caution and mystery. There are secrets buried deep within the family crest, secrets that even the blood cannot erase, the Keeper confided, his voice trembling with the fervor of decades-old memories. His eyes, shining with a mixture of hope and despair, fixed on Mira as he continued, Victor's lineage was marked by a pact, a deal made in desperation and forged by betrayal. Your discovery of the journal is only the first step. The true test lies ahead, hidden in the rituals of a time when honor was more potent than fear. Mira listened intently, her mind racing as she pieced together the Keeper's cryptic counsel with her own research. The narrative emerging from their dialogue spoke of a ritual held once every century, a convergence of spirits and men, meant to seal or sever the ties of destiny. As the Keeper's words sank in, Mira's pulse quickened. Could this ritual, veiled in myth and whispered among the elders, be the linchpin to unlocking Victor's tormented past and perhaps their shared future? With a sense of urgency and trepidation, she left the diner, the clatter of the city echoing the pounding of her heart. Meanwhile, Victor, tormented by recurring dreams and visions of a spectral past, sensed that forces beyond his control were aligning against him. Late one night, as he sat at a makeshift desk illuminated solely by the flickering flame of a single candle, Victor unrolled an ancient scroll. His calloused fingers traced the faded inscriptions, and his mind conjured fragmented images, of fierce battles waged on windswept plains, of alliances broken by deceit, and of a curse that had haunted his bloodline for generations. The scroll, which detailed a ritual of atonement, mentioned a moonlit convergence, where the true nature of one's soul was laid bare before the divine forces of nature. Victor's eyes, bright with both hope and trepidation, lingered on the phrase. Could this long-forgotten ceremony offer him a chance at absolution, the possibility of mending a legacy tainted by betrayal and regret? The next day, a series of ominous signs began to manifest. Unseasonal storms swept across the city, and inexplicable power outages plunged once bustling neighborhoods into an eerie silence. Social media buzzed with rumors of supernatural occurrences, and old legends resurfaced in whispered conversations in darkened pubs and quiet back alleys. Mira, in the midst of her frantic research, found herself increasingly drawn into an interconnected web of fate that transcended the boundaries of time. Her intuition, refined by years of grappling with her own family's mysteries, sensed that the upheavals were not mere coincidences but preludes to something monumental. In a serendipitous twist, Myra's path soon converged with that of an enigmatic historian, Dr. Evelyn Hart, whose reputation for deciphering ancient occult texts was unparalleled in academic circles. Dr. Hart agreed to meet Mira at a secluded library known for its rare collections of esoteric manuscripts. The library, a cavernous building with high vaulted ceilings and walls adorned by relics of a bygone era, exuded an aura of timeless gravitas. Here, amidst the rustle of pages and the hushed whispers of history, Dr. Hart confirmed Myra's suspicions. There is evidence that Victor's family was once part of an ancient order, a secret society dedicated to protecting the balance between the mortal realm and the supernatural, Dr. Hart explained, her tone measured and analytical. But this order was ultimately undone by internal strife and betrayal. It appears that the very ritual you've uncovered is the means by which the descendants can either reclaim their honor or be forever condemned to wander the shadows. Her words, heavy with implication, reverberated in the quiet corners of the library. As night deepened, Myra's internal conflict intensified. With each revelation, the stakes grew higher, and every unanswered question stirred a potent mix of fear and determination. The duality of her mission, unraveling the enigma of Victor's tortured existence while safeguarding the legacy of her own enigmatic heritage, became inescapable. The distant rumble of thunder outside the library punctuated her racing thoughts, as if the heavens themselves were heralding the coming storm of revelation and reckoning. Back in his loft, Victor's reverie was shattered by an abrupt knock at the door. He cautiously opened it to find a trusted childhood friend, Cole, whose eyes bore the scars of battles fought and secrets kept. Cole, always the pragmatic voice of caution, wasted no time in delivering urgent news. "Victor, you must listen," he said, his voice low and steady. "I've intercepted communications from a faction that calls itself the Covenant of Shadows. They claim that the ritual you're seeking to perform is not a chance for atonement but rather a means to control our kind, to bind our souls and keep us forever under their dominion." His eyes bore into Victor's, a silent plea for acknowledgement of the gravity of the situation. The revelation struck Victor like a bolt of lightning. The threads of his fate were now entwined with a sinister agenda that threatened not only his freedom but the very essence of his being and that of his kin. That night, under a storm-laden sky illuminated by flashes of lightning, Victor and Cole ventured out to gather intelligence on the Covenant. Their journey led them to a derelict mansion on the outskirts of the city, a place rumored to be a secret meeting point for those who served the Dark Covenant. The mansion, cloaked in decay and overgrowth, exuded an oppressive aura of despair. Victor's heightened senses detected more than just the chill of damp stone. He sensed the palpable energy of ancient curses and lingering malevolence. Inside, in a dim corridor lit by swaying candlelight, Victor encountered a robed figure whose presence exuded authority and veiled menace. "You tread dangerous paths, Victor," the figure intoned, pausing as though weighing Victor's worth. "The ritual you seek is not for redemption, it is for control. Your destiny has been shaped by forces that you are barely beginning to understand. Heed this warning, pursue this path, and you shall not only forfeit your freedom but risk dooming all those you hold dear." The words, laden with ominous promise, reverberated in the cold, damp air of the mansion. Victor's heart pounded with a conflicting surge of resolve and fear. The possibility of a destiny preordained by cruel manipulation was a notion he could neither accept nor ignore. His internal battle waged on, the call for redemption warring with the dread of succumbing to an inescapable fate. Simultaneously, Mira felt an inexplicable pull to physically encounter the remnants of this secret order. In a decisive move, driven by both desperation and burgeoning love, she contacted Victor, a message sent in a moment of raw vulnerability. "Victor, our paths converge in more ways than we can foresee. I must know if the fire that burns within you is truly destined for redemption or if it flickers merely in protest against a destiny that has been cruelly imposed." Her words, tender yet resolute, were an open invitation to confront their intertwined demons. Victor's response was immediate and heavy with the gravity of his circumstances. "Meet me at the old bell tower near Ravenswood Park. There, under the unyielding gaze of time, we shall confront the legacy that haunts us both." His message, brief but commanding, sealed their fates for a confrontation that promised both answers and irrevocable upheaval. As the appointed hour neared, the city became a stage of anticipation and foreboding. Mira, with the journal clutched tightly to her chest, navigated the winding paths of Ravenswood Park, a sprawling green expanse juxtaposed with the rusted architecture of an abandoned bell tower. The park, steeped in local lore and silent witness to countless whispered secrets, seemed to exhale a deep, ancient melancholy. Shadows danced in the flickering light of scattered lanterns, and the distant chime of the bell, long overdue for its midnight toll, echoed like an omen of impending transformation. Within the bell tower, shrouded by layers of dust and the passage of time, Mira found Victor waiting, his form silhouetted against the fragmented glass of the ancient structure. The atmosphere was electric, the anticipation of confrontation interlaced with moments of profound introspection. "We stand on the threshold of revelations, Mira," Victor said quietly, his voice echoing off stone walls, "and with each step we take, the shadows of our pasts close in around us." Mira's gaze, unwavering despite the tempest of emotions swirling within, met his. "Then let the truth be unbound, no matter how much it shatters the illusions we have clung to," she replied, her tone carrying both resolve and sorrow. In that crucible of revelations, the conversation between them unfolded with the weight of destiny. Victor recounted the harrowing details of his lineage, the clandestine pacts, the betrayal by trusted allies, and the centuries-long struggle to claim his own freedom. His confession, a cathartic blend of anguish and earnest determination, was punctuated by lingering pauses where the past seemed to intrude upon the present. "Every betrayal, every shattered promise, has been a chain that bound me to a fate I never chose," he admitted, his voice raw with vulnerability. "And yet, with every breath I take, I yearn to break those chains and forge a destiny defined not by ancient grudges, but by a hope for something greater." Their voices, resonant with the tremors of lived experience, melded with the ambient sounds of the night, distant footsteps, the rustling of leaves, and the solitary toll of the bell. The duality of their plight, caught between the savagery of an ancestral curse and the desperate longing for liberation, became palpable in every word. As they deliberated the possibility of performing the moonlit convergence ritual, a sudden sharp sound sliced through the charged silence, a creak from behind the tower's heavy wooden door. Both froze, hearts pounding in unison as instinct urged them to seek cover. The door creaked open once more, revealing a figure cloaked in shadow, a messenger perhaps, or an envoy of the Covenant of Shadows. The stranger's presence, draped in an unsettling calm, carried with it a singular, disarming message: "The time for secrets is over. Your destiny, entwined with betrayal and salvation, must now face the reckoning it has long evaded." The spectral figure's eyes, barely visible under the hood's shadow, flickered with an intensity that spoke of ancient knowledge and inevitable judgment. For a long, charged moment, neither Mira nor Victor dared to breathe, each waiting for the unveiling of what could only be the catalyst for the next phase of their perilous journey. In that frozen heartbeat of destiny, the convergence of old legacies and emerging truths reached its zenith. Mira's mind reeled with the myriad implications of the stranger's declaration, and Victor's soul trembled as he braced himself for the storm that was certain to follow. The night, heavy with the scent of rain and the promise of upheaval, seemed to whisper that nothing would ever be the same again, that their fight for redemption was now interlaced with a new, harrowing adversary whose arrival would irrevocably alter their course. With the stranger's cryptic words echoing in the silent corridors of the bell tower, an irrevocable shift seemed imminent. The promise of the moonlit convergence, the specter of the Covenant, and the intertwined fates of Mira and Victor merged into a single, inexorable force. The confrontation that awaited them was not merely a clash of supernatural wills but a reckoning with the darkest chapters of their souls, an outcome that could either ignite the spark of true liberation or plunge them into an abyss of endless turmoil. Tension coiled in the air like a tightly drawn bowstring, every heartbeat echoing the silent drum of destiny. As the night deepened and the first tendrils of an approaching storm caressed the ancient stones of the tower, the time for tentative alliances had passed. Decisions, irrevocable and binding, now loomed on the horizon, a future dictated by the courage to confront one's past and the unyielding desire to carve out a destiny free from the specters of betrayal and sorrow. In that moment of pregnant silence, where every shadow and every whisper became a portent of the trials yet to be faced, Mira and Victor stood united on the precipice of revelation, their souls poised to be either redeemed or consumed. Every lingering doubt and every buried secret surged within them, promising that the dawn would bring answers shrouded in sacrifice and brilliance alike. And as the storm's first low rumble vibrated through the corridors of the tower, fate beckoned them onward, into the heart of a mystery that defied time itself. Fracture marked the turning point in the lives of Victor and Mira as the tangled threads of destiny began to unravel faster than they could comprehend. In the chilling aftermath of their encounter at Ravenswood Park, both felt the weight of secrets newly unearthed and the escalating threat of the Covenant of Shadows. The very air around them seemed charged with palpable tension, a harbinger of the coming storm that would irrevocably alter the balance between fate and free will. In the days that followed that fateful night, the city's pulse quickened. Chicago, once a blend of ancient myth interwoven with modern bustle, now exuded an atmosphere of impending catastrophe. Urban legends transformed into a living dread. Whispers of spectral gatherings and ghostly apparitions reverberated through neon-lit alleyways, while news outlets reported inexplicable incidents. The sudden blackout of entire districts, mysterious symbols etched onto the underpasses, and eerie, unseasonal disturbances. Every fragment of evidence pointed to one unstoppable truth. The Covenant was mobilizing, and its intent was neither benevolent nor reconciliatory. Mira, driven by the desperate need to protect both Victor and the fragile hope of redemption that had begun to bloom between them, returned to the sanctuary of her modest apartment. Surrounded by the persistent hum of the city, she pored over the weathered journal, piecing together the cryptic symbols and fractured passages that hinted at a long-forgotten lineage of power and betrayal. The journal, more than just a collection of inked memories, was a roadmap, a guide to a ritual that might either shatter their cursed bonds or bind them irreversibly to a destiny they had never chosen. Late one night, amidst the flickering light of a solitary desk lamp, Mira discovered a passage that sent a shiver racing down her spine. The passage spoke of the cleansing of the veil, a clandestine ritual performed at the convergence of worlds when the barrier between the natural and supernatural was at its weakest. This ceremony, shrouded in allegory and steeped in spiritual gravitas, promised liberation from ancestral sins if one dared to reclaim the truth buried beneath layers of deceit. The implications were staggering. Could this be the key to freeing Victor from the chains of his cursed legacy, and by extension freeing them both from a destiny orchestrated by unseen puppet masters? Determined to validate her theories, Mira arranged an urgent meeting with Dr. Evelyn Hart, the erudite historian who had previously shed light on the Forgotten Order. In a secluded study buried beneath the modern sprawl of Chicago's academic district, Dr. Hart meticulously reviewed Mira's findings. The ritual described in your journal, she explained in a measured tone, is not merely a symbolic act of contrition. It is an invocation that reaches deep into our collective ancestry, a method employed by those who sought to sever the corrupt ties of fate. However, it demands a sacrifice that is as profound as the betrayal that created this curse. Her eyes, filled with both compassion and scholarly resolve, locked onto Mira's. If you truly believe that redemption is within your grasp, be prepared to confront not only the spectral forces that haunt Victor but also the demons that lie dormant within your own bloodline. As the conversation progressed, shadows danced along the walls of the study, mirroring the inner turmoil within Mira's heart. Each word exchanged between them resonated with the echoes of untold histories and the urgent whispers of impending peril. Driven by the need to act before the dark forces solidified their grip, Mira left the study with her resolve hardened and her mind brimming with plans. The path forward was fraught with uncertainty, but the promise of salvation urged her onward. Meanwhile, Victor's internal strife reached a fever pitch. In his secluded loft, the place where solitary introspection often gave way to bursts of raw determination, Victor wrestled with the dual realities of his existence: the innate allure of his alpha nature and the relentless burden of an ancestral curse. Days merged into nights as he scoured the remains of his family's relics, clinging to every memory that might illuminate the origins of his plight. Each faded photograph, every brittle scroll, echoed with the voices of those who had come before him, their regrets and failures etched deeply into the fabric of his soul. During one particularly turbulent night, Victor was startled awake by the urgent knock on his door. He opened it to find Cole, his steadfast friend and confidant, whose face was etched with both urgency and despair. "Victor," Cole began with a gravity that silenced the clamor in the background, "the Covenant is mobilizing in full force. I've intercepted messages suggesting that they've enlisted new emissaries, the very ones who once sought to extinguish any defiant spark among our kind. They're planning an assault on one of our safe houses. This isn't just another skirmish, it's a direct challenge to your authority and a prelude to an all-out war for control." Victor's eyes darkened with a mix of anger and sorrow, reflections of his inner battleground. "Then our window of opportunity is closing faster than we believed," he murmured, his voice low, yet trembling with unspoken fear. The conversation with Cole was a stark reminder that beyond the personal demons he had long struggled with, an external enemy was orchestrating every shadowy move. Victor's mind raced with grim calculations and scenarios, the possibility that the ritual, if performed, might not free him but instead unleash forces that were far darker than the curse he had known all his life. The next day, a palpable urgency drove Victor to convene a secret council with a select few who had long adhered to the codes of their hidden society. In a forgotten warehouse at the edge of the city, where dim light struggled against the encroaching darkness, a handful of trusted allies gathered. Among them were figures whose mere presence exuded the aura of battles fought in silence against the encroaching influences of supernatural tyranny. There, amid murmurs and cautious glances, Victor laid bare the extent of the Covenant's ambitions and the potential significance of the moonlit convergence ritual. Every word was laden with the desperation of a leader battling on multiple fronts, against ancient curses, modern betrayals, and the creeping influence of a shadow organization determined to subjugate his people. At that clandestine meeting, tense debates ensued, and alliances were tested by conflicting opinions. Some elders argued that the ritual was too perilous a gamble, a dangerous dance with forces that could consume the very essence of their identity. Others, inspired by Victor's fervor and the burgeoning hope for a life unburdened by centuries-old guilt, rallied behind the bold notion of reclaiming their power through redemption. Amidst this cacophony of voices, one elder, a grizzled veteran whose eyes bore the weight of countless battles, rose and declared, "To keep living in the chains of our ancestral sins is to surrender our very souls. We must risk everything for the possibility of true liberation, even if it means confronting the darkest truth of our nature." The fervor of that declaration rippled through the room, igniting both courage and trepidation in equal measure. It was in that moment that Victor made a decision, a choice that would forever alter the course of not just his own life, but the fate of all who shared his legacy. "We will perform the ritual," he stated with a voice that brooked no dissent, "but only when the time is ripe, when we are united as one and prepared for whatever truth is revealed. Until then, we must fortify our defenses and ensure that the Covenant's machinations are met with a force they cannot ignore." Back on the fringes of this gathering, Mira remained acutely aware of the stakes. Her investigation, while deeply personal, was inexorably intertwined with the broader war being waged in the shadows. In the quiet solitude of a forgotten park bench near an aged sculpture commemorating heroes of old, Mira allowed herself a moment of introspection. Her thoughts swirled with memories of long-lost family members whose voices had once filled the corridors of her childhood home. These recollections, full of both warmth and sorrow, reminded her that redemption was not merely an abstract ideal but a tangible promise forged in the crucible of love and sacrifice. That same evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the first stars began to pierce the darkening sky, Mira and Victor's paths converged once more. They met beneath the skeletal branches of an old oak in a secluded park, a silent witness to the ceaseless march of time. The air between them was thick with unspoken words and the shared acknowledgement of the trials ahead. Myra's eyes shone with a blend of determination and vulnerability as she addressed Victor. "We are standing at the edge of a precipice. If we dare to trust in the possibility of a future unchained by the past, we must embrace both the light and the darkness within us." Victor's gaze was intense as he replied, "I have spent my life running from the very fate that now looms before me. But if our futures are to be rewritten, then we must confront every ghost, be it within or without hesitation." Their voices, soft yet resolute, merged with the nocturnal symphony of rustling leaves and distant city sounds, a fleeting harmony that belied the tumultuous battle that lay ahead. Before long, the fragile alliance between Victor, Mira, and their select kin had coalesced into a plan of audacious resolve. Under the cloak of a moonless night, they would journey to a forgotten clearing in the outskirts, a site steeped in ritualistic significance where the boundary between worlds was at its thinnest. It was there that the ritual of the cleansing of the veil was to be performed, a ceremony that promised either the liberation of Victor's tormented soul or the irrevocable shattering of their destiny. The journey to the clearing was fraught with ominous portents. As the group navigated the labyrinthine backroads and overgrown trails, every rustle in the underbrush and every sudden gust of wind brought with it the echo of ancient warnings. The oppressive silence of the forest was punctuated only by the steady rhythm of determined footsteps and the low murmur of incantations whispered by those who had pledged their lives to this sacred cause. At the clearing's edge, where gnarled trees formed an eerie canopy above a stone altar etched with cryptic symbols, Victor paused. His heart pounded in his chest as he surveyed the ancient relics of a time when honor was etched in blood and sacrifice. Here, in this hallowed ground where nature's fury and mysticism converged, he felt the full weight of generations past, and the crushing responsibility of rewriting a cursed legacy. Mira stepped forward, her eyes reflecting both the trepidation and the fierce hope of a woman determined to shatter the chains of fate. "Together," she whispered, "we stand as our ancestors once did, united against the forces that have haunted us for too long." In that solemn moment, as the assembled allies circled around the stone altar, the true magnitude of their undertaking became apparent. The ritual required more than just physical bravery. It demanded an unyielding openness to the raw, often painful truths that lay hidden beneath the veneer of civilized existence. Each participant, from the haunted alpha to the determined seeker of truth, had to confront their innermost shadows, the betrayals, regrets, and unspoken sorrows that formed the essence of their being. The silence that followed was heavy, each heartbeat resonating like the distant drum of war, until Victor finally began the incantation, his voice echoing with both authority and a deep-seated vulnerability. As his words filled the clearing, a spectral wind stirred the leaves, as though the very essence of nature was lending its voice to the proceedings. The energy that had been building, like a latent force awaiting its release, surged forth in a cascade of light and shadow. The air vibrated with raw power as ancient symbols on the stone altar glowed softly, pulsing in harmony with the rhythm of their collective resolve. In that charged moment, the boundaries between past and present, between myth and reality, blurred into a singular tapestry of human emotion and supernatural significance. Yet, as the ritual progressed and the energy in the clearing reached its crescendo, a new and unexpected presence made itself known. From the shadowed perimeter of the clearing, shrouded in an inky mist, emerged one of the Covenant's emissaries. Clad in dark robes that seemed to absorb the scant light, the figure's eyes gleamed with an unsettling mix of determination and ancient malice. With slow, deliberate steps, the emissary advanced toward the circle of allies, the tension in the clearing mounting to an almost unbearable pitch. A hushed murmur ran through the assembled group. This was not merely an interruption, but an assertion of the Covenant's intent to reclaim dominion over Victor's fate. In a voice cold and unwavering, the emissary spoke, "You stand on the threshold of breaking centuries of binding oaths. But know this, the forces you dare invoke will not yield their power so easily. Every step towards your freedom exacts a price, and every promise of redemption is shadowed by the reality of sacrifice." The emissary's words pierced the charged atmosphere, casting a momentary pall over the proceedings. Victor, his voice resolute despite the shock, responded, "If our destiny is to be rewritten, then no force, no matter how dark, will extinguish the light of our determination. We will face the consequence of our choices, however steep the price may be." The confrontation between the emissary and Victor became an allegory of their inner struggles, a battle of wills where the forces of tradition clashed with the desire for liberation. In that explosive moment, as the energy of the ritual surged and the emissary's challenge hung ominously in the air, Mira stepped forward. "We have all borne the scars of old betrayals," she declared, her voice filled with both defiance and compassion. "But tonight we choose not to be defined by those scars. We forge our own destiny, one that rises above the bitterness of the past and dares to dream of redemption." Her words resonated deeply within each heart present, galvanizing them into a final unified stand against the tyranny of fate. The confrontation escalated as energies clashed. The spectral glow from the altar intensified, illuminating the resolute faces of Victor, Mira, and their allies. The emissary's dark incantations collided with Victor's fervent appeals for liberation in a burst of mystical energy that shook the very ground beneath their feet. In that swirling vortex of light and darkness, revelations unfolded as rapidly as they manifested, each truth a piercing shard of clarity amid the tumult. Every heartbeat, every whispered prayer, became a testament to the human capacity to rise from the ashes of despair and embrace the risk of transformation. For several excruciating minutes, time itself seemed to halt as the forces at play battered against each other, testing the limits of mortal resilience and supernatural power alike. In the culmination of that fierce encounter, an unexpected surge of light, tempered by an undercurrent of sorrow, swept across the clearing. The emissary's defiant stance faltered in the face of the combined might of human determination and ancient ritual magic, a convergence that signified not the end of the struggle, but the rebirth of hope. As the once oppressive darkness gradually receded, it revealed an undeniable truth etched into the very fabric of existence. Even the most formidable curse could be challenged by the enduring strength of the human spirit. Under the watchful gaze of the silent forest and the softly pulsing light of the awakened altar, Victor and Mira locked eyes. In that wordless exchange, the weight of their shared burdens and the promise of a future unshackled by ancestral sin passed between them. They knew with unwavering certainty that the path ahead would be fraught with hardship and uncertainty. Yet in that fragile, luminous moment, every fear, every doubt, was eclipsed by the possibility of a new beginning, a liberation that surged with raw, unbridled hope. As the energy subsided and the clearing slowly returned to a semblance of calm, the emissary, now diminished and subdued, melted back into the encroaching mists, leaving behind a silence heavy with both forewarning and promise. The bonds that had long constrained Victor's turbulent soul had been challenged, and the possibility of true redemption shimmered on the horizon. In the wake of that climactic confrontation, every member of the circle stood transformed, shattered remnants of old legacies pieced together in defiance, united in the pursuit of a destiny they would actively shape. In the final throes of the ritual's power, amidst the soft whispering of the ancient trees and the murmured prayers of the gathered souls, Victor and Mira sensed that their journey was far from over. Each step forward would require unwavering courage and the willingness to confront the demons both past and present. Yet together they had ignited a spark, a beacon of hope in a world long clouded by betrayal and despair. In that charged silence, as the first tender rays of dawn began to pierce through the dissipating darkness, the complex interplay of sacrifice, liberation, and love emerged with stunning clarity. This moment, suspended between agony and ecstasy, signified not just the possibility of personal salvation, but the dawn of a new era where ancient curses could finally be overcome by truth, resilience, and the extraordinary power of the human heart. With every soul in that sacred clearing bearing witness to the culmination of so many lifetimes of regret and unfulfilled promise, the night yielded one last, shattering disclosure, a glimpse of a future where fate might finally be rewritten, and every burden of the past could give way to the promise of a resplendent, unburdened tomorrow. The streets of Chicago seemed to hold their breath as night deepened, the urban chaos replaced by an eerie, almost sacred silence. Under an ink-black sky pierced by scattered, trembling stars, Mira and Victor found themselves on the cusp of a harrowing journey, one that would force them to confront not only the malignant forces of the Covenant of Shadows, but also the darker, unresolved fragments of their own hearts. After the tumultuous ritual in the ancient clearing, both protagonists felt the profound aftershocks ripple through their worlds. Victor's inner turmoil had not subsided. It had intensified, drawing him deeper into a vortex of memories where betrayal, loss, and fierce determination intermingled. Meanwhile, Mira grappled with the jagged pieces of a destiny that had been thrust upon her, a legacy of secrets that threatened to undo all the progress they had fought so hard to make. Both knew that their recent victory over the emissary was but a temporary reprieve. In the silence that followed the ritual's climax, the undeniable presence of a looming threat cast a long, dark shadow over their newfound hope. In the cramped confines of his loft, a sanctuary that now felt more like a prison of past missteps, Victor sat motionless at his desk, the chill of the night creeping through broken windows. His thoughts were a storm of questions. Was the ritual merely a glimpse of salvation, or a precursor to an even more insidious manipulation of fate? Every rusted relic from his lineage, every faded photograph and brittle scroll, seemed to whisper warnings of consequences yet to come. He recalled the elders' words from the secret council, the somber tone underscoring the peril of meddling with forces too vast and ancient to be tamed. His eyes, dark and reflective, shifted toward the moonlit skyline as he wrestled with the foreboding realization that redemption might come at an unbearable cost. Outside, the city wore a cloak of uncertainty. Rumors of supernatural disturbances grew louder with each passing hour. In the labyrinthine backstreets, where neon lights flickered and blended with the darkness, acquaintances of both the Covenant and Victor's hidden society whispered of a gathering, a conclave of the Covenant meant to cement their dominion once and for all. The urban legends that Mira had painstakingly pieced together began to converge into a mosaic of dire warnings. Every news alert, every hurried conversation in shadowed corners of diners and late-night bars, spoke of a mysterious figure known only as the Arbiter, a spectral leader rumored to be the mastermind behind the Covenant's latest mobilization. Determined not to let the seeds of despair take hold, Mira reached out to a trusted contact within the academic and occult communities. Dr. Evelyn Hart, whose wisdom had earlier unveiled the layers of Victor's tormented ancestry, was now the beacon guiding Mira through this murky labyrinth of ancient rites and modern treachery. Meeting in the hushed atmosphere of a secluded archival room at a venerable university library, Mira and Dr. Hart pored over newly discovered manuscripts, volumes long left to gather dust in forgotten corners. These texts, penned by mystics and seers whose names were lost to time, detailed the prophecy of the Arbiter and foretold a cataclysmic event known only as the Eclipse of Fate. Dr. Hart's voice, measured and resonant, filled the silent room. What these manuscripts describe is a convergence, a moment when the boundaries between the supernatural and the mortal realm become perilously thin. The Arbiter, if the legends hold true, intends to harness this moment to bind every shifter and spectral force to his will. This is no mere struggle for power, it is a battle for the very essence of free will. Your discovery of the ritual and your subsequent confrontation with the emissary were not isolated events. They are parts of a larger design. The eclipse of fate could either destroy the remnants of our past misdeeds or irrevocably shatter the future we might still reclaim. Myra's hand trembled as she turned the yellowed page, realizing the magnitude of what lay ahead. Then we must move swiftly. Every moment we delay increases the likelihood that the Arbiter will succeed and that this cursed destiny will tighten its grip on all of us. Her eyes, ablaze with determination, mirrored the intensity of someone unwilling to succumb to a fate dictated by ancient forces. Simultaneously, Victor's inner circle gathered once more. In a secure underground chamber far from prying eyes, he convened with those who had long operated in the fringes of both human society and the spectral world. Cole, still bearing fresh scars from their previous encounters, stood resolute beside Victor. Others, a blend of seasoned alphas, mystics with guarded secrets, and even a few reluctant human allies, formed a small unified force prepared to resist the Covenant's inevitable onslaught. Over a table etched with cryptic maps and symbols, Victor laid out his plan. If the Arbiter intends to seize this moment, then we must act before the eclipse of fate descends upon us. We need to secure the ritual site and ensure that the forces gathered here, our forces, are immune to his influence. The texts mention a protective charm, an ancient talisman that can shield our spirits from being ensnared. His words, laced with both urgency and a quiet promise of unity, resonated with the group. Cole interjected softly, "I've heard whispers among the Covenant's ranks of a hidden vault beneath the old cathedral downtown. They say it holds relics capable of augmenting a shifter's powers, or destroying them utterly if mishandled." The mention of the relics sent a ripple of apprehension through the gathered circle. It was a tantalizing clue, and yet a dangerous one. Victor knew that to confront the Arbiter, they would need every advantage, every morsel of lore tucked away in the annals of forgotten history. Later that night, as heavy clouds masked the distant moon, Mira ventured into the city's heart once more. The streets, now a tapestry of fleeting silhouettes and trembling lights, led her to the cathedral Cole had mentioned. The imposing structure, a relic of bygone grandeur, loomed against the horizon like a silent sentinel guarding secrets of its own. Its ancient spires reached upwards as if pleading to touch the stars, while beneath its hallowed arches, the air was thick with incense and the residual energies of countless prayers and rituals performed over centuries. Inside, dust motes danced in the dim glow of stained glass windows that cast fractured rainbows across moss-covered stone floors. Myra's heart pounded in her ears as she made her way to a secluded chapel tucked away from prying eyes. She knew that the relic, a talisman reputed to provide spiritual protection, was hidden there, locked away behind puzzles of faith and encrypted by the original builders who had intended to preserve a sacred legacy. As she moved deeper into the sanctuary, her steps careful and reverent, whispers of ancient chants seemed to echo from unseen corners, urging her to press on. Every creaking step was accompanied by a collision of emotions: fear, hope, and an unwavering commitment to save Victor and the legacy of those who dared to dream of redemption. At the heart of the chapel, Mira discovered a massive iron-bound chest, its surface etched with symbols that echoed those from the worn journal and ancient manuscripts. The chest, encrusted with centuries of wear, exuded an otherworldly glow as if inviting her to unlock its mysteries. With trembling hands she delicately opened the lid. Inside lay the talisman, an intricately crafted amulet adorned with shimmering glyphs, encapsulating what appeared to be a minuscule, luminescent orb. The orb pulsed gently, its light synchronized with Myra's racing heartbeat, as though attuned to the rhythm of destiny itself. Her mind raced with possibilities. This talisman, if wielded correctly, might be the key to safeguarding Victor's soul and bolstering their resistance against the Covenant's insidious plans. With care born of both reverence and hope, Mira clutched the amulet and vowed to reunite with Victor as swiftly as possible. Outside, the wind moaned like a forlorn spirit, and the cathedral's heavy doors closed behind her with a resonant clang, a stark reminder that time was slipping away, that the coming eclipse would leave no soul unchallenged. Returning to her safe house with the amulet secured, Mira felt both the weight of responsibility and a budding strength surge within her veins. As dawn threatened to break the oppressive night with its own promise of a new beginning, she contacted Victor with urgent clarity. "I have found the talisman," she declared over the crackling phone line, her voice resolute yet laced with worry. "It may be our only chance to ward off the Arbiter's influence when the eclipse of fate begins." Victor's reply came swiftly, intermingled with gratitude and the grim resolve of a man who'd seen too much darkness to allow hope to falter. "Then prepare yourself," he instructed. "I am rallying our allies. We will convene at the predetermined site before the first shadow of the eclipse falls. Tonight, we stand on the brink of a war that will test every fiber of our beings." With renewed purpose, Mira began strategizing with her closest confidants, mapping out every detail of their plan. In hushed conversation that spanned the breadth of secret meeting rooms and dimly lit back alleys, the group outlined contingencies for every possible threat. The plan was audacious: a simultaneous strike on the Covenant's outposts to disrupt their formation and a unified march toward the nexus of supernatural energy, where the ritual site awaited. The intensity of their preparation was underscored by a mounting urgency. Every tick of the clock was a countdown to an event foretold by ancient prophecies. As midnight approached, the city exhaled a collective shudder of anticipation. Mira and Victor's disparate quests converged on a remote clearing at the edge of a dense, enchanted forest. A place that, according to lore, had long served as a bridge between the mortal realm and the transcendental energies beyond. Under a sky swirling with turbulent clouds, the assembled forces moved with a shared purpose. In the brief moments before the eclipse of fate was set to descend, nerves tingled with a heady cocktail of fear and determination, and every soul present was bound by a silent vow that they would not be cowed by fate's cruelty. Standing at the threshold of the clearing, Victor's gaze swept across the gathered faces: resilient warriors, mystics with eyes that glowed with an inner light, and Mira herself, the steadfast seeker of truth and redemption. In that charged moment, as a low hum of energy began to vibrate through the earth, the first foretaste of the eclipse crept upon them. The wind whispered warnings, and the very air seemed to shimmer with the latent power of destiny, as if the fabric of reality itself was preparing to be rewritten. "I can feel it," Victor murmured, his voice barely audible over the rising wind. "The barrier between our world and theirs is thinning." His words sent ripples of apprehension and awe through the circle. Mira clutched the talisman close, its gentle pulsation serving as a beacon of hope amidst the gathering storm. Every instinct told her that the coming moments would be a crucible, a test that would either sever the chains of an age-old curse or bind them to a future of unyielding subjugation. As the first streaks of eerie, silvery light began to cut through the oppressive darkness, the stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the fate of all those tethered to this ancient legacy. Amid the palpable energy, every whispered prayer and every measured step became an act of defiance against the predestined narrative of betrayal and despair. In that interstice at the precipice of the eclipse, Victor and Mira exchanged a look, a silent promise that, regardless of the outcome, they would face the unknown together, forging their own destiny from the raw material of their scars and dreams. Suddenly, a piercing cry shattered the fragile calm, a warning cry that came from deep within the forest, echoing like a death knell among the trees. The sound was both mournful and defiant, a spectral reminder that the forces they opposed were not mere figments of legend but living embodiments of a rage accumulated over centuries. The assembled allies braced themselves as the horizon trembled with the first full manifestation of the eclipse, the encroaching shadows swallowing the flickering light and heralding the arrival of a power that would soon change everything. In that exact, heart-stopping moment, as the world teetered on the brink of unspeakable transformation, Myra's grip on the talisman tightened. Her soul resonated with the raw determination to overcome the darkness, to defy the legacy of betrayal and reclaim a future that was rightfully hers. Victor's eyes blazed with a fierce mix of sorrow and resolute courage, each of them understanding that the coming hour was the fulcrum upon which their fates would pivot. Their shared gaze held a promise of solidarity and the unwavering resolve to confront whatever emerged from the deep abyss of fate. As the eclipse's oppressive darkness began to meld with the clearing's ancient energies, every heartbeat, every whispered oath, and every tremor in the earth testified to the monumental struggle that was about to unfold. With the talisman aglow and their allies arrayed around them, Victor and Mira took their places at the epicenter of this otherworldly convergence. The forces of old and new were colliding in an intricate dance of sacrifice and salvation, a prelude to a reckoning that would either liberate them from the chains of a cursed past or cast them into an eternal night where hope was all but extinguished. In that soul-stirring instance, with destiny poised on a knife's edge, the night reached its apotheosis, a moment of harrowing beauty and relentless determination, where the boundaries between myth and reality blurred into a single pulsating heartbeat. The eclipse was not merely a celestial event, but the manifestation of every tear, every sacrifice, and every resounding cry for freedom that had ever echoed through the corridors of time. And as the energy surged like a tidal wave around them, Mira and Victor stood united, defiant against the darkness, their hearts aflame with the prospect of a future written in the language of resilience and unyielding hope. Under a sky ablaze with the final radiance of the eclipse, the forces gathered in the ancient clearing braced themselves for a reckoning that would redefine the course of history. The air vibrated with an otherworldly energy as the collected allies, shifters, mystics, and reluctant human warriors alike, formed a resolute circle around the stone altar. Every individual present felt the weight of generations of pain, betrayal, and unfulfilled longing converge into one moment, where destiny and desire intertwined. Victor, standing tall and battle-worn, surveyed the assembly with a mix of steeled resolve and quiet vulnerability. His eyes, darkened by years of inner torment and lit by a spark of defiant hope, met Myra's with unspoken determination. For a long time, each had carried the burden of a cursed lineage, desperately trying to sever the chains of their forebears' misdeeds. Now, beneath the tumultuous heavens, they recognized that the only way forward was to embrace their intertwined fates fully, no matter the price. A hush fell over the gathered crowd as Victor's voice, resonant and unwavering, pierced the charged atmosphere. Tonight, under the waning power of the eclipse, we face not only the wrath of the covenant but the ghosts of our past. Yet within every shadow lies the potential for new light. We are called to break the ancient cycle, to redefine our legacy in defiance of a destiny that has long bound us. His words, laced with both authority and a profound intimacy born of shared suffering, stirred a swell of emotion in all who listened. Mira stepped forward, the talisman she had risked so much to recover pulsing in tandem with her racing heart. In the flickering illumination cast by the convergence of spectral and earthly light, she revealed a truth long concealed. You all know of the rituals passed down through our families, a desperate attempt by our ancestors to avert an even greater darkness. But what if I told you that these same rituals contain not just a curse but also the seed for our redemption? Her eyes shimmered with an inner fire as she continued, I have come to realize that our struggle is not one of mere survival, but of transformation. I am not simply a seeker of answers. I am the reincarnation of an ancient seer, fated to restore the balance between light and shadow within our kind. A collective murmur surged through the circle. The revelation was as startling as it was undeniable, a secret embedded in Myra's bloodline, whispered of in every obscure text and myth passed along by those who had feared the truth. For decades, her lineage had been shrouded in mystery, marked by an almost mythic potential to unify the fractured destinies of shifters and their guardians. Now, standing at the epicenter of a historic crisis, Myra's own identity emerged as the keystone that could unlock not only Victor's freedom but also the salvation of an entire people oppressed by ancient vendettas. At that moment, the spectral presence of the Arbiter materialized, a figure whose arrival had been anticipated with dread and uncertainty. Cloaked in dark robes that seemed to absorb the starlight, the Arbiter's eyes flickered with an inscrutable intensity, as if he were both judge and instrument of fate. In a voice that resonated with the echoes of centuries, he intoned, "You dare challenge the design woven by destiny? Your defiance is as inevitable as it is futile. Every act of rebellion exacts its toll." His tone was chilling, yet beneath the veneer of menace lay a profound sorrow, as though the Arbiter himself was a victim of forces far beyond mortal control. In a moment that defied expectations, Victor stepped forward to address the Arbiter directly. "We have long accepted that our paths were dictated by the sins of the past," he declared, his voice resolute. "But tonight we refuse to be mere pawns in an ancient game. The betrayal, the cycles of vengeance, and the curse that has tormented us for generations no longer define who we are." His words resonated across the clearing, merging with the tumultuous energy of the eclipse and the palpably heavy air of fate. "We choose to reclaim our power, to restore balance not through subjugation but through the unity of our fragmented spirits." The Arbiter's gaze shifted slowly over the assembled crowd, as though weighing the sincerity and strength of these defiant souls. Then unexpectedly his tone softened. "Perhaps there is merit in your passion. It has been eons since any dared to dream of liberation instead of succumbing to despair. For a fleeting moment, the Arbiter's mask of unyielding authority cracked, revealing an expression that mingled regret with reluctant respect. Long have I been bound to an order that sought to control rather than to cure, to chain rather than to champion the innate fire of the soul. You, Mira, embody the very transformation that can shatter the confines of our shared damnation. A palpable shift swept through the clearing. The Arbiter's admission, a rare and vulnerable concession, rippled outward like the first rays of dawn. The Covenant of Shadows, once an unyielding force bent on subjugating the shifters to an oppressive destiny, began to fracture at its core. In that singular moment, the oppressive energy that had defined them wavered as if in acknowledgement of the possibility of redemption, an acknowledgement that had lain dormant in the depths of all who had suffered under its weight. Myra's revelation, and the subsequent reaction of the Arbiter, catalyzed a transformation not just in the immediate struggle but in the very fabric of their supernatural realm. The talisman she held vibrated intensely, its luminescence growing brighter as if fueled by the surge of hope now coursing through each heart present. It was a beacon signaling that the ancient cycle of betrayal and hopelessness was finally beginning to unravel. The amulet, a relic of old sanctums and forgotten pacts, radiated a power that transcended the physical, a transformative energy that reached into the souls of all gathered. The Arbiter continued, his voice now carrying a tone of solemn prophecy. In the union of Victor's cursed legacy and your awakened destiny, Mira, lies the potential not only to nullify the ancient curse but also to infuse our kind with the strength to transcend the patterns that have long imprisoned us. You are the vessel through which the broken bonds of fate can be mended, the bridge between a past mired in sorrow and a future illuminated by resilience. His words, heavy with destiny and potential, underscored a dramatic pivot. The enemy had become a reluctant ally, and the long-forgotten promise of liberation now shone with undeniable clarity. As the eclipse's final moments approached, the clearing became a cauldron of raw emotion and supernatural potency. The Covenant's emissaries, once fierce agents of control, lowered their arms in silent reverence as a collective catharsis surged through them. Every soul in attendance, whether bound by blood, oath, or circumstance, felt that the burdens they had carried were finally beginning to lift. The ancient curse, long nourished by cycles of retribution and despair, now trembled before the united front of those determined to forge a new destiny. In a transcendent climax, Victor and Mira stepped together toward the stone altar. Their joined hands, symbolic of their union and the merging of disparate legacies, channeled an overwhelming tidal wave of energy that radiated outwards in concentric circles. It was as if the entire clearing had become a portal, a nexus of timeless power where the boundaries between curse and cure dissolved. The ancient texts came alive in that luminous moment, their once cryptic symbols now glowing with a clear, resplendent meaning, the end of one cycle and the birth of a new era. Myra's voice, steady yet imbued with an ethereal quality, broke the silence that had fallen over the assembly. Let this be our vow, to shatter the chains of the past and reclaim our birthright of freedom, to unite our fractured selves in the promise of a future where love and truth outweigh the sorrows of long-forgotten betrayals. Her declaration resonated like a clarion call, infusing every heart with a fervent desire to rise above ancient limitations. In that pivotal moment, the power of the ritual surged to its apex. The talisman's radiant glow expanded, enveloping everyone in its transformative light. Even the Arbiter, once the stern enforcer of a ruthless order, bowed his head in acknowledgement of the inevitable metamorphosis. His spectral form, now softened by the luminous energy, seemed to dissolve into the very fabric of the clearing, its dissipating echoes a benediction on the new path forged by the defiant souls gathered there. Across the clearing, the forces that had long dictated their fates, betrayal, sorrow, and ancestral curses, unfurled like tattered remnants in a storm of catharsis. The eclipse waned and gave way to the gentle blush of dawn, heralding not just a new day, but a new era where the supernatural and the mortal realms coalesced in harmony. It was a moment of stunning clarity, a final, breathtaking revelation that through their unity, forgiveness, and sheer resolve, they had rewritten the narrative of their existence. In the profound silence that followed, as the first light of day cast long shadows that whispered of renewal, Victor and Mira stood side by side. Their eyes, brimming with promise and relief, conveyed the unspoken truth. Every sacrifice, every tear shed along the tumultuous journey, had led to this singular moment of rebirth. The specter of the Covenant of Shadows, once the harbinger of despair, had been transformed into a catalyst for change, a reminder that even the deepest wounds could yield to the healing power of unity and redemption. As the clearing slowly filled with the hopeful murmurs of those once consumed by darkness, The boundaries between legend and life had been irrevocably redrawn. The ancient curse that had haunted them for so long had been dismantled, its fragments dissolving into the light of a new dawn, a dawn defined not by predetermined fate, but by the unyielding will to rise above, to reclaim, and to celebrate life in all its imperfect glory. In that final, transcendent moment, a moment that echoed across the span of time and space, the journey of Victor and Mira reached its ultimate climax. The call for liberation had been answered, the legacy of betrayal redeemed by the purity of hope, and the promise of a future unburdened by the sins of the past was no longer a distant dream but a living, pulsing reality. Their shared journey, fraught with danger, sorrow, and immense sacrifice, had finally unfurled into a resplendent tapestry of deliverance, unity, and the undeniable power of the human spirit. And so, as the first rays of a new day illuminated the clearing, the hearts of all who had gathered whispered a singular, fervent truth, a truth that would guide them ever onward into a future of limitless possibility and profound, everlasting transcendence.